This down a little bit for me. Yes, thanks, Prabhu. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jai Mr. Bhad Paramahansa Rudikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Balaram?
Yeah.
Do you have something to read off of?
You can look up, yes.
Oh, you can look off of mine. Right here. I've queued it up. Android doesn't have that nice scrolling down. But here it comes. At least this Android doesn't. Okay, Balaram, you're all set. There you go. All right, here we go. Narayana Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this third day of November 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're reading from the fourth canto, The Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 20, Lord Vishnu's Appearance in the Sacrificial Arena of Maharaj Prithu, text number 15. Okay. Evam dvijagryanumatanu dharma pradhano nyatamo vitasya rasvena kalena grihopayatan drashtasi siddhan anurakta lokaha. Evam vijagranumatanuvrita dharma pradhano nyatamo vatasya rasvena kalena grihopayatan drashtasi siddhan anurakta lokaha. Evam vijagranumatanuvrita dharma pradhano nyatamo vitasya rasvena kalena grihopayatan drashtasi siddhan anurakta lokaha. Evam vijagranumatanuvrita dharma prano nyatamo vitasya rasvena kalena grihopayatan drashtasi siddhan anurakta lokaha. Evam vijagranumatanuvrita dharma pradhano nyatamo vitasya rasvena kalena grihopayatan drashtasi siddhan anurakta lokaha. Kind of a hard one. All right, before we proceed, that last word in the third line, I'll say you say, Glenn. Grihopayatan. Grihopay. See, that R is pronounced as Ri. Grihopayatan. Okay, we'll go on. Evam. Actually, you all have books and stuff, or devices, so I'll just read them through. You read silently. Evam, thus, Dvija of the Brahmins, Agriya of the foremost, Anumata, approved, Anuvritta, received by disciplic succession, Dharma, religious principles, Pradhanaha, he whose chief interest is, Anyatamaha, unattached, Avita, the protector, Asyaha of the earth, Rasvena, short, Kalena, in time, Griha, to your home, Upayatan, having come personally, Drashtasi, you will see, Siddhan, perfected personalities, Anurakta lokaha, being loved by the citizens. Translation, Vishnu continued. Lord Vishnu continued, my dear King Prithu, if you continue to protect the citizens according to the instructions of the learned Brahman authorities, as they are received by the disciplic succession, by hearing, from master to disciple, and if you follow the religious principles laid down by them, without attachment to ideas manufactured by mental concoction, then every one of your citizens will be happy and will love you. And very soon you will be able to see such already liberated personalities as the four Kumaras, the Sanaka, Sanatan, Sanandan, and Sanat Kumara. Purport. Lord Vishnu advised King Prithu that everyone should follow the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Then, in whatever capacity one remains within this material world, his salvation is guaranteed after death. In this age, however, since the system of varnashram dharma is topsy-turvy, it is very difficult to strictly follow all the principles. The only method for becoming perfect in life is to develop Krishna consciousness. As varnashram dharma is executed from different positions by different men, so the Krishna consciousness principles can be followed by everyone in every part of the world. There is a specific purpose in mentioning herein that one should follow the Dvijagriyas, the most prominent Brahmins, like Parashara and Manu. These great sages have already given us instructions on how to live according to the principles of varnashram dharma. Similarly, Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami have given us rules and regulations for becoming pure devotees of the Lord. It is essential, therefore, to follow the instructions of the acharyas in the parampara system, who have received the knowledge as passed down from spiritual master to disciple. In this way, although living in our material condition of life, we can get out of the entanglement of material contamination without leaving our positions. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advises, therefore, that one does not have to change his position. One simply has to hear from the perfect source, this is called parampara, and follow the principles for practical application in life. Thus one can attain the highest perfection of life, liberation, and go back home, back to Godhead. In other words, the change required is a change in consciousness, not in the body. Unfortunately, in this fallen age, people are concerned with the body, not with the soul. They have invented so many isms pertaining to the body only, not to the soul. In the modern age of democracy, there are so many government representatives voting for legislation. Every day they bring out a new law. But because these laws are only mental concoctions manufactured by inexperienced conditioned souls, they cannot give relief to human society. Formerly, although the kings were autocrats, they strictly followed the principles laid down by great sages and saintly persons. There were no mistakes in ruling over the country, and everything went perfectly. The citizens were completely pious, the king levied taxes legitimately, and therefore the situation was very happy. At the present moment, the so-called executive heads are more or less selected from materially ambitious persons who simply look after their own personal interests. They have no knowledge of the Shastras. In other words, the executive heads are fools and rascals in the strict sense of the terms, and the people in general are Shudras. This combination of fools and rascals and Shudras cannot bring about peace and prosperity in this world. Therefore, we find periodic upheavals in society in the forms of battles, communal riots, and fratricidal quarrels. Under these circumstances, not only are the leaders unable to lead the people toward liberation, but they cannot even give them peace of mind. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that anyone who lives on concocted ideas without reference to the Shastras never becomes successful and does not attain happiness or liberation after death. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Now I haven't looked ahead, but is the next chapter about Maharaj Prithu meeting with the four Kumaras? Anyway, Balaram can answer that question either during class or after it. The reason why I mention that is because this is one of the first books I worked on in the press back in 1973. I was proofreading this book, maybe it was early 74. And when we came, there were two sections that I remember very graphically. One is the Song of Lord Shiva. I don't think we've come to that yet. But the other one is the teachings of Sanatana Goswami to Maharaj Prithu, which I always found very cogent, very moving. And so I'm looking forward to that. You'll see what I mean when we get to that chapter. But here there's also, of course, very important instructions that Lord Vishnu is giving to King Prithu. And Krishna, as explained by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, and as we heard last night, Krishna comes to this world sometimes personally, sometimes in an expansion, sometimes he sends his representatives, but the purpose is always the same, to set society a right. Because by the nature of the material energy and by the course of time, the original dharma becomes lost. Evam parampara praptam imam rajash yovidasas kalene mahanta yoga nashta parantaba. This yoga, bhakti yoga, Sanatan Dharma, the eternal religion, is received, as explained here, from parampara, from bona fide, realized souls who have absorbed the Shastra perfectly, who, what is it? Learn it, live it, and give it. That's my little, Learn the Shastra, live the Shastra, and then give the teachings to others. And because you're living it, you have potency because you're giving example. Learn it, live it, and give it. So these are the acharyas, are those who perfectly follow those. They've certainly learned it, or they realized it, and they live according to the rules of the Shastra. This is what acharya means. Acharya is the word behavior. By their behavior they're teaching as much as by their words. If you give some lip service but you don't actually live it, then you have no potency to give it to others. In fact, it has just the opposite effect. People become convinced that that's not the path. But our great acharyas who have taken this knowledge and handed it down, and that's what parampara means. It means the disciplic succession. The disciple who is advanced and realized, he becomes the future guru. So, Krishna comes, as explained last night and explained many times in the Bhagavad Gita, when there is a discrepancy in the practice of dharma. Dharma is essential for human life. Without dharma, it's simply animal life. We learn from the Hita Upadesh. It's good to know the meaning of these words. Hita Upadesh. Instructions for your benefit. Hita means welfare. So all these instructions in this book, collection from, I think, different sources, are very important. So one of the ones says, Ahara nidra bhayamaitunansha samanyamaitat pashabhi samana dharmo hitesho adiko vishesho dharme nahina pashabhi samana. So we've come up through the animal species, right? We understand that. We never die. We're spirit souls. And what happens when the body dies? We move on to another body. And there's 8,400,000 different varieties. And within those species, there's also varieties. Well, just like there's 6 different varieties or 5 different varieties of human beings in this room. But we all belong to the same group. So there's unlimited varieties of forms that we can take. And the way the karma works is that according to your activities and the consciousness that you cultivate in the human form, then the body is just waiting. When you leave this body at death, then your next body, your gross body, is waiting. While we live in this body, we're cultivating a subtle body. The thought, the activities we do, how we interact with this world, desires we cultivate by engaging the senses in a certain way. It's all very complicated. But it's all recorded in the mind. We just access a very small fraction of our consciousness. There's a whole bunch of subconsciousness that contains all of these unfulfilled desires and aspirations and fears and all this stuff. And so, for someone who's not going back to Godhead, then they're going to another body. Hopefully it's human, but not necessarily. According to that consciousness we've cultivated, according to the activities we've done, the karmic record, that's all kept record by Krishna as the super soul and also Yamaraj, and then we get another body. So, the dharma, real dharma, is only practiced in human beings. We share with the animals because we've been animals. We have a body that's like animalistic. These 4 basic principles. We eat, we sleep, we mate, and then we defend. And you look at any cat, dog, bird, they have facility for those 4 things, obviously. So what makes us different? Just the big brain? No. If we use that big brain simply for building weapons of all different kinds, that's just defending. That doesn't bring you out of the animal stage. That just means you become more expert at defending. In other words, instead of scratching and killing, one threatening animal, you're killing thousands and millions of people. That's the so-called advancement. Sleeping, mating, and eating, we share those. But the distinguishing thing, dharma hitesho adhiko vishek, is dharma distinguishes human beings from animals. So what is dharma? That's the key question. That comes up at the beginning of Bhagavatam. First of all, what the Dharma they're not teaching, because there's all kinds of pseudo-dharmas that are called Kaitava Dharma, cheating religion. Dharma is, in English is translated as religion, but it's an inadequate equivalent. Dharma is actually the essential quality that someone has, that something has. Everything has a dharma. That cup's sitting there. I don't know why it's sitting there alone. But what is the dharma of a cup? Well, it holds some liquid or some substance, right? If you have a cup and you pour some water in and it all leaks out on the floor, that's a cup that's not fulfilling its dharma, right? It's a useless cup. Throw it out. It's got some crack in it or some hole. So that has a dharma, right? The walls have a dharma. They hold up the roof. You know, everything has a dharma, animate or inanimate. What is the living entity's dharma? You see? What is the actual dharma? So the first thing in Bhagavatam, second verse, first line, second verse of the first canto of the first chapter, dharma projita kaitavotra. Here in this Bhagavatam, we're kicking out, throwing far away. Dharma projita means thoroughly, 100% rejected. There's kaitava dharma, cheating dharma. What is kaitava dharma? It's activity that you may be worshiping God or some god, demigod or goddess, you know, whatever you're doing, but it has a material motive. Even if you're worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, but you're doing it for some material motive, meaning that you want to get peace, you want to get anything, health, wealth. Normally people pray to God for that. That's called cheating religion. You're cheating yourself. You're cheating yourself by thinking that this is the real way in which I can improve my life. And millions and millions and millions of people, not only out of India, but in India, they're doing that. So then the question, well, what is real Dharma? What is that Dharma by which people can really attain happiness eternally? Not this flickering happiness, sense gratification that comes and goes and leaves you with a thought in your mind to enjoy again and bring you back to suffering another birth. That's not Dharma. That's answered right in the second chapter. Savai pungsang paro dharma yato bhakti radhokshaje. Real Dharma is that which engenders, which produces bhakti, loving devotional service, to adhokshaja. Adhokshaja is a name for Krishna, which means he who is transcendental, the transcendental Lord. It doesn't give you much details, but it gives you that essential information that you cannot understand him by your ordinary means of approach, by some investigation of the material energy. You're not going to find God. He's completely beyond that. So that's the word used. In other words, that which engenders bhakti, savaipangsang paro dharma, supreme dharma, yato bhakti radhokshite. What is that bhakti? Now here's the key line, because it differentiates actual Krishna consciousness, pure Krishna consciousness, which is what we're trying to practice here. This movement is based on it. From all other so-called worship of God. And that is ahaituki and apratiyata, which means no material motivation. You can't go to church once a week and pray for, cure for the disease, or let me have enough money to pay my rent, or whatever. All of that so-called prosperity religion, what do they call it? It's a complete kaitava dharma. It cheats the soul. No. What is the motive? There has to be a motive, although it's called a haituki. That means no material motive. Well, what's the motive? To please God, to please Krishna. That's the actual motive that makes it pure. Now, when you're actually serving that way, and at the right beginning of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, we have that a similar verse. He defines it even more explicitly. Activities that are intentionally engaged in to please Krishna, not by accident, but intentionally. That's bhakti. So what happens when you do that? Well, that's throughout the Bhagavatam is explained, Bhagavad Gita. You become purified. It purifies your heart. If you do it right, you don't take another birth, because you're cleansing your consciousness. Remember, that's the vehicle for transmigration, the state of your mind. So your mind is becoming purified. Your heart's becoming purified of material desire, which is what ropes that tie you to this world. And you're tying the ropes to Krishna. There's a verse in the 11th canto describes, I forget the first line, but pranaya basandaya tutang vipadma. Pranaya Vasannaya means the ropes of love. That when chanting the holy name successfully, you tie the Lord's lotus feet to your heart with ropes of love. That's the success. And in other words, you're going back to Godhead, even in this lifetime. So that Dharma, which produces that bhakti, that's general Dharma, and that's what differentiates from the animals. Otherwise, we're polished animals, two-legged animals. Okay, so now what he's saying here, if you follow the religious principle laid down by succession without manufacturing mental concoction, then all the citizens will be happy, because that's what the Kshatriyas are really concerned about. They're executive heads. If they're concerned about how they can milk the citizens and make off like bandits, then they're demons. Then they're going to a dark place. They have to suffer 1/6 of the sinful reactions, right? Or they'll have to suffer. It doesn't say that. They suffer the sinful reactions, some portion. But when you have millions and millions of people that you're trying to protect, you can imagine how dark that is. All of these leaders and kings, that we read about in our history, what to speak in the Bhagavatam, who simply, their whole idea was, Vena. Vena is pertinent to us. He's the father of Prithu, in a sense. He was like totally, reflective of our modern leaders. What's in it for me? How can I exploit this position to make $1 billion, or stay in power? There's a certain intoxication just of being in power. That's demonic. That doesn't lead to happiness. It leads to misery for everybody. So genuine Kshatriyas, taking instruction from the pure Brahmins, Vaishnavas, their activities are motivated by how we can protect the citizens and how we can further their spiritual advancement. That's the success of Varnashram. We learn that in the second chapter also. Atak pumbu dvijash Varnashram vibhagasha swanatadasadama sangsidi haritoshana. The perfection of all this Varna and Ashram, when everyone's doing their duty nicely, is to please Hari. Remember, that's the real motive of Dharma. So, now going into this purport here, we find 2 verses quoted, although not but in the Sanskrit. But Prabhupada is describing how the key message here is to mold our lives according to the instructions of genuine Shastra. And genuine Shastra means, as we have here, not just the words spoken by the ancients, that we get the Sanskrit, but also as explained and given to us by the Parampara, especially by Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, as he points out, and if you know how these books are produced, he's referring to various commentators here. When he gives us these purports, he's giving a lot of his own realization, obviously, but at the same time, he sometimes explicitly quotes, or he just gives the essence of the commentators. So in other words, we're very, very well grounded here. And if we follow the instructions here in these books, then we'll be on the way back to Godhead. So it is essential, therefore, to follow the instructions of the acharyas in the parampara system, who have received the knowledge as passed down from spiritual master to disciple. So, there's 2 verses here. One is the one that he cites Lord Chaitanya. Here he is. Lord Chaitanya advises, therefore, that one doesn't have to change his position. So the point is, Varnashram is completely topsy-turvy. Prabhupada uses that term today. You can't really... Prabhupada wanted us to have farms and show the ideal of Varnashram Dharma. But there's very little chance that there'll be a Varnashram revolution in society. But there can be a Krishna-conscious revolution. And therefore, he says, don't change your position. In other words, don't do anything radical in your life. Give up sinful activity. If your job is in a slaughterhouse, you have to get a new job. But basically, don't do anything radical, but add the hearing. Now, this is a verse that Prabhupada is quoting. You know this verse, Balaram. Gane piyasam udapasya namanteva jivanti sanmukatitam bhavadiya vartam. Stane stita. Stane stita means stay in your position. So this is a prayer of Lord Brahma after he was illuminated that he couldn't trick Krishna. His mystic power was way greater than his. So he's offering his prayers in chapter 14 of the 10th canto to the little Krishna. Krishna doesn't say anything. He's standing there with a little fruit and yogurt in his hand, and a flute tucked under his waist. And here's this four-headed Brahma, just got off a swan, as is the creator of the whole universe. He lives to 311 to 40 billion years, but he realizes that he's very insignificant in front of this the Supreme Personality of God, who's taking the role of this little boy, which is the most amazing thing. So he offers these prayers, and this is the one this is right near the beginning of the prayers, most often quoted. There's a few others that are very important and are often quoted. But this one has become even more famous because Lord Chaitanya accepted it as the first in the progression of Ramananda Roy's answers to his questions of what is the basic question we should always ask if we meet somebody who's realized, what is the goal of life and how can I realize it? What is sadhya? Sadhya means the goal. Sadhana, you probably heard that term before. Sadhana, practice. What is the practice and means to reach that goal? So he keeps answering these questions. He starts out with Varnashram. He says, those who worship the Lord through their activities in Varnashram, this is the perfection of life. And Lord says, that's external. Keep going, keep going, keep going. He even goes through Bhagavad Gita, which you would think, well, that's the ultimate. Sarva dharma parityajya, give up everything, surrender to me. He says, no, that's external. Finally, he gets to this verse, Jnane priyasam. So what that says, the first phrase means give up all your hard effort for trying to find it out on your own. In other words, or reading and hearing from others who have tried to find it out on their own, without reference to the parampara and the shastra. So that's jnane priyasam. Jnana means knowledge. In this case, it means knowledge gained through what we call the ascending process. This is called the scientific method. Observing our world, coming up with some conclusion, testing it, a hypothesis, and it seems to be working this way. Okay, we got it. It works that way. We did it 20 times in the lab. It's been replicated. Okay, now we know. And you build up a mountain of evidence that way and a whole body of science. And that's what we're living on. But that doesn't take you beyond the limits of your own mind and senses. You see the problem there? And Krishna is adhokshaja. Adhokshaja literally means, it's nice, maybe you can remember some of these. Aksha means eyes, or senses in general. Ja is short for janma, means birth. We know Janmashtami, right? So what's born of the eyes, born of the senses, is material knowledge. Knowledge acquired by the limited senses and the limited mind. The mind is said to be the sixth sense. It guides all the senses. So you can't reach, but the adha word at the beginning. So now you have three words. Adha, aksha, ja. Aksha ja means that which is born of the senses, all of this knowledge that comes from that. But Krishna pushes it down. Adha means down. Means he's far beyond that. That's a graphic description of transcendental. If you look it up in the dictionary, that's what it means. We're into transcendental truth, right? So all of this mountain of knowledge is just a big mountain of illusion, because you can't get to the essential source of everything. That's what we're for, right? Atato Brahman Jigyasa. The Brahman is that which is the source of everything, beyond the limits of matter, transcendental. So Krishna is adhokshaja, and in order to learn about him, you just have to hear. You have to hear from the right source, without the static in the mind. That's what this verse is about. So Brahma is saying, Brahma, who's the possessor of all material knowledge and a lot of spiritual knowledge as well, but he knows the course by which one can attain knowledge of God. He's the head of our sampradaya. He's the one who taught Narada Muni, who taught Vyasadeva, who taught Madhva, all the way down to Srila Prabhupada and beyond. So it's all coming down. So here's Brahma speaking. He says, give up this effort, hard effort for acquiring material knowledge. Udapasya, throw it away. Namanta eva, and surrender. Surrender to who? Jnane priyasam udapasya namanta eva. Jivanti san mukaditam. San mukaditam. The word san or sat means the sadhus, the devotees. Mukaditam. Just listen to the words emanating from the mouth of the pure devotees. That's what these books are. Prabhupada spoke for years, to enlighten us. And wrote. It's the same idea. Bhavadiya Vartam. And you speak your news, in other words, news about you. He's speaking to little Krishna, right? your lila, your instructions. Listen to that. How? Sthane sthita. Stay in position. Don't do anything radical. Add the hearing process. Shruti-gatam, the path of hearing. And now here the key phrase, tanu van manobir. Now how do you hear with your body? Well, you hear with your ears. But the idea is that what you hear, then you act on it with your senses. And van means you repeat it. That's words. And manobir, you think about it. You see? Tanu van manobir. One who lives in this way, he says, Jivanti ye prayaso jita jito pasitais trilokyam. That throughout all three worlds, the only ones who can conquer Krishna are ones who practice this process. How can you conquer Krishna? He's ajita, unconquerable. He is conquerable by love, as we learn here, right? He's bound not with the ropes, but with his mother's love. So he agrees to be conquered and controlled by love. So this is a very high understanding of God, that He is all-powerful, He's the source of everything, He can control everything, but He responds to loving devotion, and that's what bhakti is all about. And when that loving devotion is developed to the highest pitch, He agrees to be controlled by it. That's His pleasure. His pleasure is to pretend to cry there, or even to cover his knowledge, so he's actually crying in fear of his mother Yashoda, just like he covers his own knowledge, so he can engage with the gopis, with forgetting that he's God. I mean, you know what I'm saying? In other words, if you have all this strength, like a father, he's playing with a little boy. Well, the father is very strong. He can hurt the boy, but the last thing he wants to do is hurt the boy. So he wants to get down and let the boy get on top of him and ride him like a horse, right? So if the father is really into it, he gets into the mood. Oh, I'm being controlled by my boy. That's the nectar. That's the rasa that he's looking for. That his little child is controlling him. So it's something like that. Is that Krishna takes pleasure in being controlled by those who love him. But to develop that love means we have to purify ourselves of all of this selfish motivation and all the garbage we accumulated for many lifetimes. So that's the first verse he's quoting here. And you don't have to, it doesn't matter who you are. The point is, it has nothing to do with varnashram. It just has to do with your own willingness to hear, to take in this knowledge and try to follow it. That's the whole program. That means it's open to everybody. Every sincere soul. Man, woman, old, young, doesn't matter. So then he goes on, and he puts down this democracy idea. And the problem is that, democracy was a rebellion against kings who had become demons. If you look at the history of the Middle Ages, and then the whole way in which America, it was there, of course, in Greece too. It all depends on the leaders and the people being virtuous. When there's all of this crazy propaganda going on, people aren't educated, and the demonic modes of nature become prominent, then what good is democracy? We so-called have democracy in America, and look what we got. We got like the most unqualified person to lead anything, what to speak of a country, sitting at the top spot. And everybody in the world is like biting their fingernails, hoping that he can finally get out of the office so he doesn't have his crazy finger on that button. That's the end of democracy. Democracy doesn't work because there's no restriction, or there's no assurance that the people will actually know what they're voting for. That's a fact of mine. So many government representatives passing the laws, but they're not like the laws of Manu. They're not like the laws from the Bhagavad Gita. They're imperfect laws, and it's a big mess. So then he goes on, describing that people have no knowledge of the Shastras, the executive heads of fools, rascals, and that people are all Shudras, and so this combination of fools and rascals and Shudras cannot bring about peace and prosperity in this world. Taken again right from the headlines. You can see it being played out right here. It's obviously, Barbara is seeing it completely accurately. Then there's so many battles, wars, so forth. Okay, so then at the end now, he has this very important instruction, which I'll just finish with. In the Bhagavad Gita, it's stated that anyone who lives on concocted ideas without reference to the Shastras never becomes successful, does not attain happiness or liberation after death. So this is a part of the Bhagavad Gita, the 16th chapter. The last 4 verses are very, very cogent. They're worth referencing. I'm just going to turn there to chapter 16. And the last 4 verses, it begins with, okay, so he's described the divine and demoniac. The first few verses he described how many? Over 20 qualities of saintly persons. It's worth studying. And then he says, okay, now I've described the divine, now I'm going to describe the demoniac qualities. The first one is dambha. Dambha means vainglory. And what's that phrase Prabhupada used? In other words, being proud unjustifiably and bluffing. Bluffing is part of dambha. That's the characteristic of the of the demons, you know. And con man is a perfect example. Demon. Con man means that you try to make out you're something else for the purpose of cheating others, you know, and then you move on to the next mark. That's con man, right? So he goes through and he explains, you know, the qualities of the demons, and it's like eye-opening. He says, "Well, we're surrounded by those people. They're in the government." And then you get to the end, after he described that, you know, the demons, they go down and down and down. I push them down, and he says perpetually, which means, you know, for a long, long time they can't, you know, improve because it. So how did they get that way? So he starts out, he says, Trivadam Nadakasya Dam. There are 3 gates leading to this hell I just described. First one is always kama, lust, material desire, which is love of God that's been polluted or contaminated by the modes of nature and turns into personal, very powerful personal desire led by sex desire. So, Trivadhang Nadakasya Dwaram. Dwaram means doors. There's 3 doors leading to this hell. Kama, Krodha, Tata Lobhas. Lust, anger, and greed. Greed is actually a concomitant of lust. Because lust is never satisfied, it always burns like fire. And the material desire headed by sex, it branches out into all kinds of other things. And there's never enough. That's what greed means. You're never satisfied. You want to just accumulate more and more and more. These multi-billionaires, they're perfect examples of it. You know. So, kama kota tasmare, therefore one should give them up. Well, okay. And so now we're out of the just a description of the demonic section, and he's giving us some formula for curing ourselves of our own demonic tendencies. And then he says the benefit. Etava mukta kontaya tomo dwarais tubirniraha. One who has liberated himself and freed himself from these 3 gates to hell. Tomo dwarais tribir, the 3 gates to darkness and suffering. Tomo dwarais tribir acharat yatmanakshi. Here's where he has that acharya again, like the acharya. He acts in such a way for his ultimate benefit. Acharat atmanak, for the soul, shreya. This word shreya comes up again and again. It's not material welfare. It's the welfare of the soul. Atmanak shreyak tato yati param gatim. And in at the end, he goes back to Godhead. Param gatim means the supreme goal. So this is very graphic. If you can act in such a way, perform a dharma by which you escape from these gates, or purify your heart so that you overcome them, and then our path back to God is clear. Then comes the verse that he refers to in this purport. And that is Yakshastra Vidamutsraja. Now the last 2 verses talk about the Shastra, which is our shelter. This is our foundation of our knowledge. Yakshastra Vidamutsraja vartate kamakarara nasa siddhim avapnoti nasukam napadamgatim. One who disregards the injunctions of Shastra. Vidhi. We're trying to practice Vidhi Bhakti or Vaidhi Bhakti. Vidhi means the rules and regulations. A rule is different than a regulation in Prabhupada's vocabulary. The rules are what you do, and the regulations are what you don't do. And it's like that we have the 4 regs. That's what you don't do, right? No illicit sex, gambling, toxication, meat eating. And the rules are so many do's. In any discipline, material or spiritual, there is a list of do's and there's a list of don'ts. And the more you follow both of them, the quicker you advance. So, but here it says, Shastra Vidi Utsrija. He gives up the instructions of Shastra, the do's and don'ts, and simply acts according to what? Kama, your own desire, your own whim. He said whimsically. That person, Yak Shastra Vidam Utsrija, Vartate, and continues to act according to his whims. Vartate Kama, then what happens? Nasa siddhim abapnoti. That person does not attain perfection. Nasa siddhim about, nasukam, nor happiness, nor the supreme goal. So in other words, this is the choice we have. And the last verse in the chapter kind of sums up the whole program, of bhakti. It says tasmat, therefore. When you see a verse beginning with therefore, it's usually summing up an argument. Very important. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya bhavastito gatva shastravathanoktam. Hear the word vida again. Vaidi. Shastravathan. Karma karta mihayasi. Therefore, one should take as one's evidence of what to do and what not to do, the Shastra. We're back to the Shastra, which we began with. The Shastra is nothing but a record of the words of Krishna himself, or his expansions, or his representatives who are fully realized and are speaking on his behalf, just like Srila Prabhupada. What good is Krishna to us of Krishna's words in the Bhagavad Gita? It's all Sanskrit. Might as well be Greek. It's Greek to us, right? In other words, we can't understand it. We need a translator, but more than a translator, we need someone who can give it to us as it is, because he's realized it and explain it in such a way that it actually impacts our mind. So that's the great acharya like Srila Prabhupada. So therefore, one should accept the Shastra as the pramana. This word pramana means evidence, or a source of authority that you accept. And having accepted it and having understood the do's and don'ts in the Shastra, one should act in that way as a matter of duty. Because at the beginning, our habituation, our conditioning, is telling us exactly opposite the Shastra. So therefore, it requires faith, it requires determination, and it requires association to give you the spiritual strength to act according to that way. So that's what this wonderful purport is all about. And of course, he's encouraging Maharaj Prithu, who is an incarnation, empowered, but he's still getting instruction here from Vishnu, to embody these principles in your rulership of the nation, of the world. And of course, he will do that. And as Vishnu has predicted, sure enough, Sanat Kumar and the others, they come and give him even more wonderful instruction that we'll be able to hear in the coming weeks. Okay, so something happens. What happens in 21? Okay, all right. So it'll be a little while, but we can look forward to it. Or you can even look ahead. You all have devices. Okay, any final questions, comments on some of these points?
So you mentioned this idea of not either praying for health or something like that.
Yeah.
Some time ago, there was I think Bajrayana Swami sent an email, and he was asking the question, when people come up to us, what are we supposed to tell them if they ask, can you please pray for my family member? Can you please pray for me? We're going through some health crisis. And so, because that happens quite often, and sometimes a big temple room or something, can you pray for this person? Yeah. And just everybody, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So how are we supposed to view that idea, or how are we supposed to justify that, or,
Well, I think that's...
Pray for health so you could be Krishna conscious?
Well, of course, it depends on who it is. I mean, when Prabhupada got sick, he encouraged the devotees to chant, and pray to Nrsingadev. But that's, for Prabhupada, so he can continue his preaching and help us, But the way I see that is also it's a preaching event. In other words, somehow or other, if someone chants the holy name, it's all auspicious. You see, and after all, what does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita? There's 4 kinds of pious people who come to me. Chaturvada jana sukritanojana. They want artha, relief from disease. Artha means distress, or money, artha, artho jigyasu, artharti. And then those who are curious, which is the better. And the best is the jnanis, who are aware of what they're looking for. They want knowledge of how to, and Krishna then identified with the jnanis, and finally he says, after many, many births, one who's really in knowledge, they surrender to me and make their life perfect. But it's definitely auspicious for people to come to Krishna for material desires, because they come into Krishna. It's not necessarily that auspicious to just come to God in general. He's not talking about, okay, everyone who goes to church once a week and prays for relief from their cancer is on the way back to Godhead. Not necessarily, because they're not coming to Krishna. The idea of God is very vague. There's no form, there's no pastime, there's usually no name, So, but if you come before beautiful Radha Giridhari and pray ardently for relief from suffering, then that part of it, what is just going and meditating and praying ardently, that will purify you if you keep coming. Eventually, most people come. I came because I was curious, but also I was in distress. My life was confused, living in New York in 1970. Whose life wouldn't be confused? And so. I was looking for something for various motives. Usually a motive is not just one thing, So, but then having come, and then chanting the mantra, that's, if you just do it with some concentration, it has a tremendous effect on you. So what I would say is that it's not something that we emphasize as the goal, certainly. But in certain situations like this, where people are going to chant more intensely if they're praying for their aunt to get better, fine, let them chant, but make sure they're chanting Hare Krishna. This is the big thing. Not just not just that they're asking God to it's all within the realm of at least recognizing the existence of God and the power of God, and if that God is the original God, the beautiful form of Radha Giridhari, then that can be purified, as it is. And we have so many instances in the Shastra. So that's how I see that. It's as long as it's not okay, now we're going to have a program where everybody who's got a problem, you come, and we're going to pray for each one. No, not like that. You come, we'll have a program. You come, we'll chant Hare Krishna and prasadam.
Also about when dealing with one's guru or teachers, shiksha gurus or diksha gurus, that sometimes the idea may come up, okay, well, what do you, because you're supposed to inquire, it says, Bhagavad Gita says you should inquire. Yes. So, but then some may say, so many people are inquiring, but are their inquiries good? Are they valid? Are they meaningful? Frivolous. Are they frivolous? Because some may say that maybe so many things are unnecessary to inquire about because so much of it is in the scripture. Yeah, books. Like my guru, my spiritual master, he made this comment, and I was thinking about it and was trying to understand, but we either have the questions and answers booth at the LA Rath Yatra. Yeah. And I don't know if no one was able to come up, or him and Sylvester were joking, this and that. And my spiritual master said something to the degree that, we'll put a sign up there and say, if you have any questions, open Prabhupada's book, so I answer them for you. So sometimes it's hard, to tell whether. And with him, at least, what he said when he had questions in relation to Krishna consciousness or spiritual life, he said he would always try to find them in Prabhupada's books, the answers, and he would chant japa about it, and then he would pray to Krishna about it, the deities.
Then, if he couldn't
and then only then, if he couldn't figure things out, or maybe he would ask some devotees, and then if he couldn't figure out all of that, then he'd ask Prabhupada what he...
I'll tell you, I never wrote to Prabhupada, but
some comments on that.
I'm sorry I didn't, because there's I'm sorry that I didn't study the books more carefully and find things that I wish I could ask him about now. like the fall of the jiva. The statements. There's a section where there is a whole purport where he gives Jaya and Vijaya not as examples, which he most often did, but as this is an exception. They didn't really. It was Krishna's desire that they came. It's not like a fall from, and therefore, and this is one that the no fall. We call them no fall vadi. A vadi is a philosopher, like a Mayavadi. They speak. Anyway, that's the word in Sanskrit. Vadi. So we call them no fall vadis. Means that we never fell from the spiritual world. And my simple argument is, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of statements counting, and I count the going back home, back to Godhead phrase, which appears over 600 times in the database, in letters, lectures, books, and conversations and everything, as evidence that Prabhupada thought we came from there. What else could it mean? Go back home, back to Godhead. But there is a few statements. Therefore, this is one of them. It's in the 7th canto. Therefore, the conclusion is that no one falls from Vaikuntha. I wish I could have written Prabhupada on that one. Yes, but here, somebody did, and to get something that. So maybe I was too hesitant. For me, it was like. Prabhupada was on Mount Olympus, if I didn't absolutely need to ask him a question, why distract him from writing the books, And sometimes they say, so many questions, this is why I've created the GBC, so that you'll, answer these questions. So, I on one sense I'm regretful, but in another sense I say, okay, I was satisfied, because I always had my nose in the books. I'm always reading them, and studying the, and proofreading, so. I had, but I could easily see how that would be a valid program. They say, look, especially when people ask questions which are, I'm just pointing you to the book. In the 7th canto, 9th chapter, it says this. So read thoroughly Prabhupada's books and then come back with a question. So it goes both ways. Okay, I think we got to end. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Anymore.